just shooting down this wash to where it's just slow motion through the air, So with my camera, I'm just capturing blah, 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 blah. I must have got 50 photos of something in this sequence or more of this jet as it flies by. And as I come up and around the corner, I see this giant dark gray saucer.
Wow.
That's like matte black saucer. And it's, sorry.
Hey guys, it's Jimmy here from the UAP Files. Now today I've got Adam Dashwood with me. He's a content creator, a videographer. He's making his own content on the internet. Not really a UFO guy, really, in as much as the stuff that he posts. In fact, I can't see anything on there that relates to UFOs. However, he was out, he had his really decent camera, and he's taken some photos and some footage of some objects around a jet. Now, I often get stuff sent over to me. Adam's footage was no different. It was just more interesting in that Adam was there. He had a good camera. He's prepared to put his face to his footage. And that's not often something that we get. People that say, look, this is what I've got. You can have all the metadata. You can have all the original footage, all the original photographs, and I'll give you my witness testimony, essentially, on camera. I'm happy to do it. So that was awesome. So I said, let's do it. And that's what this is today. Adam also has a personal experience, which he goes into, and I really appreciate his openness and his honesty and showing his vulnerability in talking to us today. So I'm not going to waffle on any longer. Let's jump into it.
I was actually going to a graduation. Best friend of my wife was graduating master's degree. So I brought the camera just to grab some portraits of her graduating, just to give to her as a gift. And maybe take some photos of her and my wife that they could look back on, So I got those photos and I took my 85 millimeter prime lens. And I was shooting on a Sony A7 IV. So we're on our way back home, and there's a local air show that happens every few years. I live near Air Force Base, March Air Force Base in Moreno Valley. And so on the way home, we saw these jets flying around, and I don't remember if it was the Blue Jays or there's one other one. I can't remember the name of it out here, but they were flying, 5 of them at one time and doing these cool shapes. So my wife says, do you want to stop off the side of the road, closer to home, and we can watch the rest of the air show? So we did that. And I just so happened to have the camera on me. So I'm shooting, anything that I find interesting. And the F-22 shows up, and it's doing this hovering kind of maneuver where it's not hovering as much as it's just kind of like just shooting down this wash to where it's just slow motion through the air, So with my camera, I'm just capturing blah, 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 blah. I must have got 50 photos of something in this sequence or more of this jet as it flies by. And that was it. And about 2 weeks later, I finally dig into the photos to send to my wife's friend for her graduation. And then I get to the jet photos, the air show, and I'm like, oh, I zoom in. I wonder how clear the picture is, because I didn't take a zoom lens, which I would have rather had for something like this. So I was curious to see what the 85 millimeter prime captured and how much detail I could get of the pilot in the cockpit. So I'm zooming in and I'm looking around, and then I start to see these objects, and so I'm a photographer by, hobby, and I'm a videographer by trade. It's my day job. So I'm around cameras all the time. I'm constantly seeing footage. I know what dust looks like on a lens. So this to me obviously is not dust, it's like there's a lot of contrast. And I noticed that throughout the sequence, I was seeing them in multiple shots, but they were in different places. So yeah, stop me at any time if you.
No, man, keep going. Yeah, that's fascinating. So you can see the trajectory.
I could see the movement of these things, and I could also see that within the focal range of whatever aperture I was set at in the camera at the time, And I'm glad that I have actual raw photos that I sent you that will show the data. If you go to info, it'll show all of my camera settings. That way people can kind of, use that data if they will. But to me, the most compelling thing was at points of their trajectory, they would be in and out of focus, which tells me that they were getting closer and further away from the craft as I was focusing on the jet, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the craziest things to me, was that if it were a craft, an object, an aircraft rather, of the air show in the distance, it wouldn't be as clear in the photo with such a wide aperture on a lens like this. The 85 millimeter prime is really good at blurring everything that it's not focusing on. So the fact that I have things in focus tells me that it was within that range of the jet to be in focus. So yeah, that kind of blew me away in that moment. And I was like, what the heck is this? And I started to do a real deep dive on these photos. I spent like an entire day zooming in, looking through all my photos, and I started seeing them everywhere at the show. And sometimes I could see groups of them hanging out. For multiple frames, they'd be in the same spot, and then they would move, or yeah, it was really interesting. So with this jet, the F-22, I could see them coming into frame, and then it looks like they rotate around it. So I don't know if
Wow.
you want to go through the photos that I sent you quite a bit, but I did tag them all in red so that you can kind of see like which ones were the more obvious. But within that sequence, you can arrow through on Lightroom or whatever preview, and you could see how they come into frame, and then they move and do a circle around the jet.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, yeah,
We hear a lot from air shows and objects that or we see quite a bit of objects that are sort of shot, but it's like a one frame or a couple of frames maybe, and we see that a lot. And obviously, it goes back, it goes back to Foo Fighters, doesn't it? When we've seen these sort of weird
yeah.
orb-like, sphere-like objects around the aircraft. So it's fascinating to see, and it keeps happening. We keep seeing it. I keep getting sent footage, but quite often it's either a photograph, just a single still, and it's a dot there, and it's easy for people to try and disregard it. Say, oh, it's probably an insect or something. It just looks a bit like it, and you just happen to capture it in the photo. But to have multiple frames, and as you say, the sort of rotation around the aircraft is incredible. Awesome. How did it feel? I mean, when you're sitting there and I've got these photographs. What were your thoughts?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you and say that I'm not very interested in this topic. Since a young age, 14 years old, my grandfather took me to International UFO Congress in Laughlin, Nevada. And, I've just been interested in this stuff for a really long time. I just love the mystery of it. And so when I came across the images, it took up all my time. I was just completely engulfed in it. Like, no way did I capture this stuff. And I'm not saying that it's aliens or it's UFOs or whatever. I know what I usually see in photos. And I actually have a bunch with birds, and I have one with photos with other aircraft from the air show in the background. You can clearly see that they're not what I'm pointing out here. But yeah, it blew my mind. And I showed my folks, and I blew it up on their TV, and they were like, dude, what the F is, what is that, And that just sent me down a deeper rabbit hole into all the photos. I wanted to see if I got something really crazy. And I have video footage of the F-22 taking off, and this thing zips in, comes close to it, and zips out of frame really fast. And then another one comes through and zips right through it. And this thing is like, the F-22 is climbing, so it's probably like really roosting it. And these things come in and out so fast. And I'm just like, is that a bug coming into the frame? Like, if it were, it would, it wouldn't, it just, these things aren't adding up, yeah. So, and then just recently in April, the air show came again, and I was at my folks' house, and I'd shot some stuff, and I sent you one of a C-17 with, it looks like a tic tac kind of thing up above it, and it could be a fuselage from another plane, but it doesn't look that way to me, you know. So I'm just gonna keep on shooting and seeing what I can find. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
please
it's
do.
really interesting. Yeah.
Have you ever spent any time intentionally going out trying to capture? I mean, obviously these ones were by luck, I guess. When you've taken photographs, you happen to see the aircraft, or you're at an air show, or whatever. Have you gone out with the intention of, or do you think you will do after this?
You know what? I haven't. I'm so like enamored with photo type work that it's not something that I usually do as a hobby. I try to, you know, um, and I camp a lot with my wife, and we go out in the desert in the middle of nowhere, and we've seen some strange things. And when I wish I had my camera on me, but I guess those moments aren't meant to be captured, you know. But yeah, I definitely will be doing that more
Yeah,
more often. The Chris Bledsoe, uh, that stuff, and just the Skywatcher team, and yeah, just you mentioning Ross Coulthart mentioning the orbs, seeing it, air shows, and this is at a base, so
yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we seem to have those links between the military bases, nuclear strategic bases, and then the sort of just the aircraft in general. So there's that connection, but there's also this sort of connection that if you're trying to take a photo, this is what we keep hearing. If you're
Yeah.
trying to take a photo and your intention is right, I'm going to capture something, then you're less successful in doing it. And it's when you're
Mm.
either you haven't got your tech with you, or you're
Hmm.
not intending to take a photograph. In your case, you're taking a photograph of a jet or scenery or whatever, and you look back, and we get that so often. Somebody just looks back through some footage and then, okay, what's that? That's unusual, and zoom in,
Yeah.
and sure enough, they've captured something because the mindset or the intent or whatever it was just not. I don't know. There seems to be this connection. I hear it so much. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
would be as successful if you intentionally went out there. Right, I'm going to capture some UAP today. I don't
Yeah,
know.
next time I'm out camping, I will definitely put that intention out there, because hearing now that if you do these things, that sometimes they show up. I'm curious, although I don't know if my wife would be very happy if that happened.
Now I'm going to pause it there for a second. Please stick with me. Adam's about to describe an experience that he's had. Um, I'll throw in some AI generated sort of footage to help tell the story, not necessarily from Adam's description. However, Adam does draw a picture indicating the style and size and what this object looked like, which he's about to talk about. Now, it's obviously had an impact on Adam, and I didn't know he was going to talk about this. Essentially, it's a guy that's got some photographs and some interesting footage, and I thought it'd be great to get his first-hand account. But I didn't realize that this was part of his story, his life. He's experienced this thing some years ago, and it was pretty profound for him. He shows his vulnerability in this video, and I really respect him for doing that. It's easy to go, look, I saw this, and here's the footage, and here's high res images, and here's the metadata, because you've got that corroboration to back up. You saw something, you're not saying what it is, but to then say, look, I've had this experience, nobody else was there, so you either believe me or you don't, that's fine. But you're putting that vulnerability out there for people, and I really respect him for being brave enough to come out and say, this is my experience, and to share it on camera. He's not done that before, as far as I can see. Anyway, let's get into it. Yeah.
I do have an experience, though, that I would feel stupid not to tell you while I'm here. But back in 2021, I was visiting with a friend who lives near Lake Matthews in Southern California, and this is about 10 miles maybe from the Air Force Base where I captured these things. So it's about 10:30 at night. I'm driving home from his house, and it's very dark in this area. It's like rolling hills. There's not a lot of property out there, so the light is pretty sparse. And I've done this drive a bunch of times, but off in the distance near the base, I see this glowing light, and I'm thinking it's an aircraft, a helicopter or something. So I'm not immediately kind of like taken by this, but there's something weird about the light. It doesn't look like the typical aircraft light. It's almost like more luminous, you know what I mean? Like it's lighting up the whole thing, but all I see is a light. So I'm driving towards it, it's coming towards me, it's way off in the distance still, but I see it drop down, and it didn't look natural to me, and it kind of like hit me in the gut that I see this thing, and I'm by myself out in this secluded area, and it's dark, and now I'm getting a little creeped out, you know. So I'm coming closer, it's coming towards my direction, and I could see that it's now dimmed its light, and now it's not moving anymore, and I can't really make out what it is, but I know that eventually I'm going to cross paths with this thing. So I'm coming up to this municipal water treatment kind of building that we have here, and it's next to a fire station, and they have a big radio tower, and there's a river that runs through this area and into the lake. And as I come up and around the corner, I see this giant dark gray saucer.
Wow.
That's like matte black saucer, and it's sorry. It's really weird that every time I talk about this, I get like an emotional reaction to cry. I don't know if it's some sort of PTSD or something, because it was pretty frightening, but so it's perfectly still. It looks like a picture, like I'm looking at a picture, because it's just not moving at all. And I remember it being a really windy day, and I tried to pull out my phone earlier to seeing it, to take a picture of it, but my flash ended up going off and focusing on my windshield. And at that time, at the point, I was like, screw it, I don't need a photo, you know. And as I drove by this thing, yeah, it scared the living shit out of me. And I keep going down the road enough to where I can look back and see it, and I pull over, and I'm just watching it, and I call my wife. And at the time, we weren't living together, and I don't usually call her this late at night. And she picks up, and I'm like frantic. I'm like, babe, I'm looking at a UFO. Like, I'm looking at it. And she's like, what? She's like, you're scaring me, you know? And I'm like freaking out, dude, just watching it sit there. And there's no cars, there's nobody around. And I'm like, and I'm into this kind of shit. Like, my favorite movie is Alien, you know? Like, but I did not want to see that. It hit me the wrong way. And I went to bed and just like woke up, and I saw that thing in my eye, like as soon as I woke up. And I went across the street to my neighbors. They were having coffee in the morning, and then I just kind of needed to talk to some people, and I started to tell them what I saw, and I got sick, dude. I got pale, and I had to go home and eat, and just like it kind of haunted me for like a week. I couldn't get it out of my vision, and every time I bring it up, I just get this like shaky voice thing, and I can't. I've cried talking about it. It's weird. It's very interesting, but I know it's very hard to believe. I know a lot of people are gonna not believe this. I just wanted to share something that I experienced that I thought that you would find interesting. And yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, man. I really
of
appreciate it.
course.
Really
Yeah, of
appreciate it.
course. Yeah,
That sounds really profound. Really profound. You
yeah.
you you, you know what sticks out when you're sort of talking about that, and it's something that a question that I've asked a lot of people who have had sightings or experiences, and that is kind of, would you, especially people that have had a negative experience, we talk about things like abductions and things, which is that the more I don't know. It's the area that people don't seem to want to go to in the subject of UFOs and UAP and stuff. Is that kind of darker side of actually the negative experiences or the negative reactions that people have. And I've had this thought many times that if something was to just show up, how would I deal with it? Especially if I was on my own. How would I respond? How would I react? How would I be the next day? And because that's never really happened to me, like I've had a sighting of something in the sky, a dot that acted really unusually, and I couldn't give it a conventional explanation very easily. I'd still consider that to be a UFO, but it's not something as profound as your experience or other, when people see entities or, things like that. I just think, how would I cope and react? And I don't know if, the human body's designed or the human brain is designed to react in the perfect way, to something like that. It is in some respects, it is trauma, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
how do you deal with
And
that?
I tell my wife and my friends that are into this stuff a lot that there's only so few of us in our friends group that will talk about UFOs in a serious way without it being like woo woo or a joke. Because the bottom line, I just don't feel like we're alone. This place is so big. It's like, to me, that's ridiculous. So I would rather learn about this and research this kind of stuff and just kind of listen to all the different sources and and just kind of prepare myself for what might come, because they're not ready for it, kind of thing, that we're no disclosure because the people can't handle it. I might feel that way now because I didn't jump out of my car with my cell phone and want to take pictures of this giant thing in the sky. Like, it was just shocking seeing it there because I'm not used to seeing something there.
Yeah.
Like to a normal person just looking up in the sky, we're used to just seeing sky. When you see something sitting there that's not normal to you and you're by yourself, it's nighttime, add all these other things in, it's pretty terrifying. And I didn't think, like you said, how would you take it? That is not how I thought I would take it, dude. I thought I would be ecstatic. And when I tell people, like, I was at my sister's house for 4th of July, and I told her about this, and she's very interested in the topic, and she's like, "Man, I want to see one. I want that." And I'm like, "No, you don't. You really don't want to see that. Like, when it's that close and you're by yourself, it's absolutely terrifying." I just felt like an ant.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it it
Yeah.
it was it was traumatizing. I enjoy sharing the story, but no matter what, and I'm not a very emotional, like outwardly emotional person, but it hits me every time.
Showing your vulnerability, isn't it, and being open about it. And I think it's so important that people like you, should share your experiences, because we had so many years of just the stigma and people going, "Look, I'm never going to tell anyone this because they're going to think I'm crazy, they're going to think there's something wrong with me." And the more people that
Yeah,
come forward and say, "Look, I've had this weird experience, and let me share that," and I think that's why people are so fascinated and excited by a lot of these people in Congress and in the intelligence community coming forward saying, "Look, we know this stuff's real, that some of this stuff's real, and we've had experiences as well," because it adds that credibility, and it's almost like a sense of validation to a lot of people that have perhaps held things back or not wanted to for fear of being ridiculed or whatever. And the thing is, I'm deep in this space. I speak to so many people, hundreds and
sure.
hundreds, thousands of people that have had an experience similar to yours and different, but the unknown and unusual and things that you just can't explain away. And more and more people are coming forward and talking about it, which is amazing. It's
Yeah,
making a big difference. Really,
yeah,
everyone's playing their part. To
right, right.
make this a much more mainstream subject that we can talk about and openly research.
Yeah, 2025 is a wild year, isn't it? For
Yeah,
for this kind of talk. I'm 42 years old, and for us to be having this kind of stuff being talked about in public is kind of nice, you know.
absolutely, 100%, 100%
So I
agree.
appreciate you having me on. It's my first podcast. I've never told this stuff publicly, and uh, I was a little nervous, but yeah, appreciate you having me on, Jimmy.
No worries at all. Take care of yourself, Adam. Let's talk again, man.
Yeah,
If you get anything else, any other captures, send them on over, man. Appreciate it.
you got it.
Take care of yourself. Speak soon, man. Take care. So that's it. If you enjoyed this and found value, please consider a like, a share, and a subscribe, and maybe leave a comment below. It really helps with the algorithm. And if you can afford it, the Buy Me a Coffee link is below. Thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next one.